Everybody knows that getting from one place to another is easy. Simply spend half a year's worth of income on a multi-ton metal box capable of traveling at hundreds of kilometers per hour. I'm going to show you just how easy it is to cycle once you know where the good routes are. Part 1 of this video applies to any city. Next, I'll show you some good bike routes across Greater Victoria. Then it's general advice again, how to get good cycling maps on your phone. The bicycle is the ideal mode of transport for cities. Your city might have great cycling infrastructure on paper, but I'm gonna make a guess. You probably don't do it as much as you want to, because the streets feel sketchy. We're gonna connect the dots between what exists on paper and what exists in the real world. Part 1. If there's one thing in this video that will leave you set for life, it's this. Looking at the map. Just look at the map. Get familiar with street names, what type of infrastructure exists where. Yellow. Yes, this is speaker 22. You can't tell which type of line means what kind of infrastructure? Do you use Google Maps? Oh, there's your problem. Use OpenStreetMap, the community-created map. It's super accurate and up-to-date thanks to volunteers and has a way better cycling layer. No, not at all. This isn't a bit for a sponsor segment. It's all free and open source. I just want you to get the best map. Of course, you're welcome. Alright, bye now. Go to openstreetmap.org, hit the layer button, and choose CyclOSM. Later I'll show you how to access this map on your phone. Cool, right? Suddenly all the disconnected bits of infrastructure are starting to look like something usable. Between reading the map and real-world experience, you can piece together a route to bike just about anywhere. Part 2. Here's some routes in Victoria that are handy to know. If I said something about every piece of infrastructure, this video would be over an hour long, but you can explore everything with OpenStreetMap on your own time. I'm going to cover the Goose, Lochside, ENN, Fort, Shelburne, Uvik Bike Connector, Gordon Head, and Royal Bay. I'm also going to mention some painted bike lanes that are good and some that you should avoid. So most people probably know about the Galloping Goose. It's actually one of 3 regional trails run by the CRD, and I'll save my rant about how these used to be railways for another time. The ENN is a little known parallel alternative to the Goose that's shorter and has less hills, good for going between Victoria, Esquimalt, View Royal, and Langford. At Uptown Mall by the Switch Bridge, the Goose and Lochside branch off. The Lochside connects you to the Quadra Mackenzie area, Reynolds, the protected lanes on Mackenzie, Royal Oak, and all the way up the east side of the peninsula. It also connects to the airport, which is actively destroying the region in multiple ways, but again, that's a topic for another video. The city of Victoria has the most complete network in the region, and ties together a lot of these connections. The west side of the Johnson Street Bridge takes you to the ENN or the Goose, and the east side connects to Pandora, Fort, and Government via Wharf Street. That's not the end though, because there's a ton of other great connections I could talk about. Let's focus on Fort Street. This is a super useful connection that provides a protected route all the way into the Jubilee neighborhood. But it also connects to Shelburne, which then ties together so much more of the city. I did an entire video on Shelburne, but here's the gist. Use the crossings at Chestnut to get onto Victoria's part of Shelburne. The painted lanes here are plenty wide, so they feel almost as good as a protected lane. When you reach Pear Street, you don't need to continue along Shelburne and get delayed by traffic lights. You can turn right and use these side streets to access Uvik, or head north towards Larchwood. If you cycle to Uvik, I highly recommend discovering the Uvik Bike Connector, because it's so much better than Henderson, but most people don't seem to know about it. Many people still cycle along Foul Bay instead of at least Dean Street. Lastly, I wanted to highlight a little unofficial route that only exists in CyclOSM, the Royal Bay Galloping Goose Connector. Someone added this purely because it helps show people that cycling is possible. Turn off the Goose at Charlie's Trail, go along West Campus Road, and exit the university grounds at Wishart Road. From here, just a couple turns and then you're in Royal Bay. That's right, you can get to Royal Bay from Victoria on mostly separated infrastructure. This is the power of OpenStreetMap. Someone was able to share this bike route with everyone else. On the topic of painted bike lanes, you can see that these solid blue lines represent protected lanes, while these dashed lines represent painted lanes. If a bike lane is painted, it's probably been around long enough that you can see it on Google Street View and assess whether that's somewhere you would want to ride. Some painted lanes are really wide and absolutely fine. Others are so narrow you would rather have nothing at all. Don't be forced to ride right next to parked cars. Move further out and take space from the car lane if you have to. Motorists are legally obligated to give you a meter when passing, and some bike lanes trick people into not providing this space. Hopefully, you won't have to take these routes at all. Part 3. I'm going to show you a few ways to view good bike maps on your phone. First, obviously, your phone has a web browser too. You can visit OpenStreetMap.org or CyclOSM.org, and also pin it to your home screen if you want a more app-like experience. If, like me, you prefer to navigate by sight and just look at the map before you head out, this is great. But if you want navigation and offline maps for checking while you're out and about, I have a couple more suggestions. First is OSMAnd. If you're on Android, I recommend downloading it through F-Droid instead of the Google Play Store so that you can get the Pro version for free, but to the best of my knowledge, you can do what I'm going to mention with the free version. When you open OSMAnd for the first time, it'll automatically download a map of your region and will prompt you to download other regions if you try to look at them. These are your profiles. You can customize each of these, but I'm going to work with the cycling profile and make it the default. Open Configure Map and enable cycling routes like such. This map loads quickly and works offline, but it's not using CyclOSM, it's using CycleMap, and yes, there's two, they're different. You can see that this layer doesn't differentiate as well between, say, a touring route and actual comfortable infrastructure. You can view CyclOSM inside OSMAnd, and I'm showing the steps for this on screen now. This is a nice option if you want everything in one place. However, CyclOSM isn't available offline, so you'll have to switch back and forth between CyclOSM and the offline vector maps. Ultimately, this is no different to just opening the browser when you want to look at CyclOSM. So, the second suggestion I have is RideWithGPS. While I stay away from proprietary services, many people have good things to say about RideWithGPS, and they have their own cycling layer that is almost as good as CyclOSM. I will warn you though, you have to pay a subscription in order to have maps offline and actually get directions just by punching in your destination. If that's workable for you, then this might be the best option. Which reminds me, OSMAnd does directions for free. Going back to the question from the beginning, why not just use Google Maps? The cycling directions you get from OSMAnd are far better, and unlike Google Maps, it's regularly updated with new infrastructure. If you want to get the best directions in OSMAnd, play around with the routing options until you get something that makes sense. Or just use it as inspiration and turn where you want. I don't show you this technology so you can surrender your agency to a computer algorithm. At the end of the day, you are a better computer than anything humans can create. I want you to use this technology to discover bike routes and store them in your brain. You might run into some bike crossings like these, which are intended to give you the right of way. The gist is that you should never activate the flashing lights because they do more harm than good. I did a whole video on these crossings, so here's my advice. If you're cycling, I would say focus less on pushing the button and more on positioning yourself where cars can see you. I've found this to be a good way to communicate how these crossings work through my actions, and a lot of the time, this is much faster than stopping to push the button. No matter what you do, people are going to drive by, so just get right out there and make sure they see you. The misconception that flashing lights give people the right of way leads drivers into thinking they don't need to stop for people who don't activate the lights. And this also means that they're not paying attention. But this is a crossing, and your job at a crossing is to use your eyes. This is why flashing lights are dangerous. So we approach the car lane. Make eye contact with the cars. Give them a thank you wave. Other side's already stopped. Easy peasy.